build an environment of pursuing curiosity.
You know who you are, who you really are. Like,
you are listening to Everyday Educators on 1921 Radio.
Everyday Educators, and we educate every day. What's going on, loved ones? Welcome to Everyday Educators on 1921radio.com. As always, I am Jeremy Rembert, your host, here with the always beautiful Miss Naomi. What's going on, eh?
Nothing. I learned that I definitely could be more productive if I had like a 3-day weekend. So as reading and like seeing all these articles about like 4-day work weeks, this weekend has made me think like, yes, that would be great.
Okay. What was the best part of your weekend?
I saw Drake on Friday. I went to
How was that?
House. Phenomenal. It was so good. Every time I go to a concert, I'm always like thinking about how much stuff costs, like licensing, all that stuff. He had like a Peter Pan float. And like the Peter Pan theme music. I'm like, wow, Drake, tell us that you have money. And it's just like, I love, because all that's starting in somebody's mind. So like, and to see it like actualized is probably like my favorite thing about going to concerts, because they're, like I said, they're creative, they're cool, and someone had those ideas.
Yeah.
Or the show. And especially, that was my first time seeing Drake, so I was super excited. But I think especially someone like Drake, who has been performing close to 20 years at this point, thinking about like, how do I top my last show? How do I, make my people feel good and happy to be here with me? It's just a really cool experience. So
okay. Was that your like best concert you've been to? Where does that rank with, like,
I would say it was top.
Anita Baker.
So I saw, if you don't know, I love Anita Baker. She is like my favorite ever. She's been my favorite since I was a little kid. I really loved Anita Baker because I love live music. Fun fact about me, I also played the violin for 12 years, so I know a lot about music in general, and so I love to hear live music, and I like to hear the creativity in live instruments. So Anita Baker's band, when she was in Chicago, I think it's like 2019, right before the pandemic, her band brought that, and so it was like really cool. I saw Kendrick maybe like a year ago at this point, and I will put Kendrick up there as one of my favorite concerts.
I'm gonna steal a term from the JBP. I am a Hovenger for sure.
Wow.
And I've seen him twice. I've seen Drake twice as well. But definitely Jay-Z, top everything. Okay. We're gonna jump right into actual factual. So I just saw The Equalizer 3, and it was great. The way that they were able to continue the story in a new way was refreshing. And it's, they're not part of the same universe, but Dakota Fanning was in it. And, in my heart, I would like to think this is a continue. Oh, no, that wasn't Dakota Fanning. See, I was going to say Leon the Professional. I'm thinking she was in it. And I'm like, oh, this is the same little girl, but different universes. I digress. But my question is for you, Nay. What are your, favorite actors? What are your favorite actors?
Favorite actors? Let me think here. Who would be a favorite actor?
So while you gather your thoughts, of course, I'm gonna start with my metaphorical father, Samuel L. Jackson, Sammy J. Um, Also, I love Don Cheadle. His performance, not many people saw it, and it's a very like avant-garde film. But Miles Ahead, when he played Miles Davis, like he was Miles Davis. It's like on par with Will Smith as Muhammad Ali. Like he was really, really good. And then of course, the man who I named myself after him, Peoples Hernandez from Shaft, also starring Samuel Jackson. Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright is a phenomenal actor. So those would be like on my list of favorites. What about you?
I think the one person that comes to mind is Daniel Kaluuya, and I think he comes to mind because I recently had a conversation about him. But I think of him. Obviously, I first got introduced to him in Get Out, which he did a really great job. But he was in Black Panther. He was in what's that movie that was about the Black Panthers?
Judas and the Black Priest.
Yes. And I just feel like he really brings to life whatever character he does. Like in Get Out, I think like I was like obsessed when Get Out came out. I read all the articles, I had all the opinions. I probably could have wrote my own article, but I didn't. And so he really brought that experience to life, which we as Black people or person of color have all experienced some level of that.
100%.
So yeah, he is who is coming to mind. But I'm not really like, this isn't like who are your top 3 R&B singers like that. I know, like actors, I would have to like kind of like think about it. And then of course you think about like all the answers that like to questions that you didn't ask, like who don't I like, or like Tubi came to mind.
If y'all don't know, I don't know what they call the Tubi Hive, but she a part of it for sure. So, Nay, I have a question. Have you watched any of the Star Wars films or shows?
One, but I fell asleep.
We're going to ignore that little bit of disrespect on the
I'm not
great
trying
Star
to be
Wip
disrespectful. I'm just saying, like,
I
that type
mean,
of stuff
I hear
does
you.
not align with my brain.
Listen, Carmen, a hip opera, not the wave. But Star Wars, a space opera, is the wave. So, but it's okay. It's okay. So, for those of you who do not know, there is a new television series starring Rosario Dawson called Ahsoka. Now, Ahsoka is the Padawan or the apprentice to Anakin Skywalker. And I know you've fallen asleep, Nate, but Anakin was who he was when he was on the light side of the Force. He was Anakin, but when he went to the dark side of the Force, he was Darth Vader. Do you know who voiced Darth Vader?
No.
James Earl Jones. Yep,
Well,
from Meteor Man, right? See, keeping it black.
yeah.
So I know I love Meteor Man too. In honor of Ahsoka being released on Disney Plus, The Root.com, not the band, but The Root, they released a list of the best Black TV series, and some of the best shows ever were on that list, such as A Different World, The Jeffersons, The Parkers, Good Times. Fun fact, I didn't know that. Good Time was a spinoff of a show called Maude, which was also a spinoff from All in the Family. And as you may or may not know, the Jeffersons were also a spinoff of All in the Family. Did you know
That
that
I
show?
didn't.
But did you know All in the Family has 7 spinoffs in total?
No,
I know,
I did
right?
not.
They was busting. So my question to you, it could be on this list or it could be, another show. Do you have like a favorite spinoff or a go-to that comes to mind?
A spinoff show?
Yep.
This is um I guess my favorite spinoff is, I don't even know if it is a spinoff technically. It's the best spinoff of all time, Law and Order SVU.
And that was on the list. That was definitely on the list. Okay, I'm rolling with that.
Olivia Benson has gotten me through
Many days.
all my college years, grad school, studying, or I guess like prepping for interviews. Like, she has been the background of so many papers and just stuff I've done. So I have like no words other than like I said, best spinoff of all time.
Okay. I would have to give the credit to the show that is the reason why I went to college, like 99%. Maybe not that high, but a big percentage. A Different World. A Different World with Whitley and Dwayne. Like, I was like, man, I thought that was Hampton. I thought they shot it with just Hampton students. So, yes. So, here we go. Our third actual factual. A little bit of trivia. Can you name this professional athlete? If I'm gonna read off some stats, if you get it, then you can just shout out.
But okay.
All right. He played for 4 Major League Baseball teams in 9 seasons. Okay. He played for 5 NFL teams in 14 seasons. You know who it is?
Isn't it Deion Sanders?
That's right. I'm gonna keep shouting out Prime. He once scored a touchdown and a home run in the same week. He is a 2-time NFL champion, Hall of Famer, and arguably the best cornerback in NFL history. Prime time himself, Deion Sanders. So good job with that. See, you knew it.
Dang, when you said baseball, I was like, ain't no way. I don't know no baseball player.
See, that was the curveball. Yeah.
Then you said football. It's like there's only one. So
actually, it's not. Bo Jackson. He played baseball and football. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That I did not know.
I think there's only 2 baseball, football, but there's some baseball, basketball as well. But I digress. So this weekend, the Colorado Buffaloes defeated Texas Central University by 3 points, having entered the game as 20-point underdogs. Now, Coach Prime had one of the strongest transfer classes this year, including his sons, and a young man by the name of Travis Hunter, who played like 140-some odd snaps. And like Prime, he plays on both sides of the ball, wide receiver and cornerback. And so this fact highlights Prime's ability to connect, recruit, lead, and motivate young men, which brought me to my question for you today. What makes a great educator? If thinking about Prime as a great coach, and again, I'm not asking you about like a good one, but what makes a great educator? What do you think?
I would say one, connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that connection is like having had the experience. So using Prime as an example, he has played at the highest level in 2 different sports. And so he has that connection with players in the sense of like, I've been where y'all are trying to go. So if you follow my plan, you'll get there too.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that that same vein, I think like respect. Prime talks a lot about
Mm-hmm.
demanding respect seems like harsh, but he is very traditional in kind of like how he leads his team. Like if you 2 minutes late, you're not gonna play. You can't show up to his locker room with earrings and like things I think in 2023 we might be like, well, that's a bit much. But I think he holds true to like old school values, and old school values have served him well.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is teaching his boys that.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing is probably like an open mind. In the sense of, I don't know, feedback isn't the word, but like hearing the ideas of your students. So, you know, in the realm of education, the buzzword student centered or student focused is like floating around. So a lot of times people talk about getting away from like a teacher standing in front of the classroom and lecturing, or you know, things of that nature, versus like running with like the ideas and the questions that students have and teaching them from that point, which goes back to connection and respect, ironically. So those would be like my top 3 things.
Okay. Those are good.
Thanks.
Those are good. I'm in the same ballpark. So I said passion, patience, and authenticity. I think that not all good players are good coaches, and not all good students are good teachers.
Amen.
And so like I watch a lot of videos. My new thing on YouTube is like it was like woodworking, but now it is more like construction. So like I'm watching these videos of people like build homes, and I was able to have a substantive conversation yesterday at the coffee shop on like footings and foundations and whatever. But although it is like a passion of mine, it's nothing that I want to know enough to like teach anybody, like walk them through that process, right?
Yeah.
But if you wanted to talk about like the college going process, right? Like we could talk about that all day, you know? And so like both having that passion for the content and having the passion for like bringing others along with you, which kind of leads into my second point, is that patience, right? Being able to see the end result, like, you know, again, going to the same example of like the college going process. So if you have like a freshman, you know what the end result looks like, right? And so you can kind of walk with them, not necessarily do it for them, but let them know that somebody's there with them through that process. And as they, you know, make those mistakes, like you don't overreact, because you know, like we can make these adjustments here and there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then authenticity. Like I always remember my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Westfallen, who was like very passionate about math, right? And he was just like this super, you know, lily white guy from, you know, a world that I would never know. But he was just himself, right? Super mad corny, but like he really cared about math. And like him caring about math so much and him being patient with us, like, was probably the most math I learned like before college. Pardon the interruption, loved ones. We had some technical difficulties in this next section coming up. Thank you for bearing with us. Now back to the show.
Cigarettes and cigarettes, my mama think I say. I miss my cocoa butter kisses. I think we're all addicted. Do you have like a, I don't want to say favorite, I ask favorites, but I realize because of Nikita, I have a lot of quote unquote favorites. But do you have like a go-to mixtape? I don't want to ask the best, but it's like a mixtape that's been holding you down for years.
I would say that, like, I listened to that one like religiously. I haven't listened in a long time. You just reminded me of it. But then also, Friday Night Lights. I'm a J. Cole fan, if you guys didn't know. So I can't hear you. There we go.
Are we counting So Far Gone as a mixtape?
Oh yeah, that is a mixtape.
Yeah, that's not going to be my answer, but I would say I would just in taking that under consideration. There's some honorable mentions. Wale got some classics.
Oh yes, how could I forget?
Yeah, too many to remember. But in honor of BG being released from prison today,
Yeah.
We're gonna take it back to the 1990 2000 Cash Money Records, Cash Money Millionaires. And I'm gonna say, well, here I go with the best again. But I am going to say that the Dedication 2 is the best mixtape of all time.
I can respect that. I can appreciate that.
50 Cent had some, but man, Wayne and Drum, that was just like
Wayne mixtape era was like, you can't go like
mixtape. I was gonna say mixtape Wayne was like Melo in the Olympics. Like, he may not play like this during the season, but he gonna give you some world championship performance on this mixtape.
this guy that I went to college with. Now that I'm older, I like understand more. But he was like obsessed with Wayne, and it was like obviously in that I would argue the height of his career almost. And he was, now that I look back at it, I'm like, that guy was from New Orleans. Of course, Wayne was his end all be all.
I think we all have some irrational appreciation, right? Especially when you think about those like regional superstars. I remember like going to Virginia, and everybody didn't know like Adrenaline Rush. Like, everybody didn't know Twisted. And I was like, how do you not, like, how could you not? Like, they knew Overnight Celebrity. They knew like the big, Kanye hits. But I'm like, bro, Twisted? But then again, that was my first time like living out of Chicago. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
So, I wanted to do something special for everyone listening. This being the beginning of the school year, right? And for like educators, it's like the beginning of like our academic calendar. Like, this is when like our year starts, right? And for both you and I in different capacities, enrollment season is coming up, right? Or like is starting. And so I thought it would be beneficial for families like across the country, whoever's listening, for us to share some tips when choosing a school or like an out of school program, right? I'm like reflecting on our interview that we had with Craig Stevenson, and he mentioned that families don't always know that private school is an option for them, particularly like Black and brown families. And so I figured that instead of just having like some, broad general tips, because you have an expertise in private schools, that you can kind of talk more specifically about that, give the people some tips, and then I'll follow up with you on some out of school programming. How does that sound?
Great.
All right, well, it's your show. Why don't you kick it out?
All right. I'm just gonna jump right in. My first tip is the educational philosophy of the school. So what this means, or what I try to tell people, is like, look inward, like look at your like personal family values and see if that aligns with the educational philosophy. Some schools are all about sports or faith or whatever the case may be, and like if you look inward or look at your own family values that you're trying to create, and see if those things align. Like my best example is probably maybe like a couple years ago. I was working with a mom who really liked the school that I was at, but she wanted faith. Faith was a big part of what her husband were focusing on with their children. And so she ultimately did not choose my school because, again, the educational philosophy didn't align. We were not a faith-based school. And she wanted that extension of her home in the classroom that we couldn't offer her. My next tip is academic programming. So this, I think, can be difficult if you don't speak the lingo. So I encourage you, obviously, to listen to us, but like do your own research around like academic programs and what that means. So the curriculum, the teachers, how they teach. Is the program rigorous? Is it not so rigorous? Like, are they focused on SEL, which is social and emotional learning, for like the first 5 years? And then they focus more on academics after that. Is it flipped? Like, those are the things that I would recommend. Class size. Class size matters more than people know. But again, a lot of this is about like looking inward and looking like really getting to know your kid. And so some kids can handle a big classroom. They're self-directed, they're focused, and they don't need to be in a smaller environment. Some kids need a smaller environment. So I would just say, try to get to know your kid the best you can, and really ask those really pertinent questions of the school that you're looking at. So make sure that they tell you the student to teacher ratio, and make sure that you are detailed in that. Don't let them give you like the broad strokes of it. Ask specifically like, what is the student to teacher ratio, either for the like the homeroom class, or like if they are departmental, like what that looks like across different subjects. Dang, hold on, my iPad.
You're doing good.
I feel like it's
Doing
weird
great.
that I'm just like talking and we are not
Well, I mean,
back and forth.
Right. I talk a lot on the show. But I do think that it is important that families get this information. You'll hear us mention a lot about education literacy, right? And we feel that, we know these items, right? And I'm using that word specifically. Like, we know school, we know kindergarten, we know grades, we know tutors, but we don't know how they work together. We don't know our role as parents and guardians, like our responsibilities, and we don't know all of our options, right? And so when we're choosing paths, we're limited by what you know, and oftentimes like the path of least resistance, right? And so, Nay, I feel like you're doing a great job in kind of showcasing, things to consider, because like families could make small adjustments in their mindsets, and then that will change their actions. and give their children, more options. So, although I'm not, doing a lot of talking in this, that's because like you're the subject matter expert, as the consultants would say. So keep it going.
A bonus tip in this is not on my list, but it's one that you just made me think about. Make sure that you are clear on what the expectations of you as a parent or a guardian or the person that is responsible for that child. Different schools have different ideas of that. Some schools have very high expectations of parents, even if you are paying a high tuition bill. Some schools try to manage as best they can in-house and try to keep a lot of that pressure off of parents. Just make sure that you have an idea of what that looks like and how you can manage that within your own family and within your own home.
For sure.
Extracurricular activities. This is a big one. You really have to consider what you want your day-to-day to look like. Do you want to be picking up your kid and like going, like now we're going to go to dance and then we're going to go to basketball and then we're going to go home to dinner? Or do you want all of that stuff kind of like at a one-stop shop? When they get out of school, they can go to the basketball court and have basketball practice, and then they can do homework, and like when you pick them up after school, all that stuff is kind of taken care of. Some families, either depending on your family structure, you could be comfortable with either one, but again, look inward, make sure you know what that looks like. And sometimes if you're doing this for the first time, it's hard to envision until you live it. And so in that, I would recommend that you talk to someone, maybe that be like a family friend, a cousin, your sister, whomever that you know that has kids and kind of can connect with you on that hustle and bustle of that day-to-day life, what that looks like, running kids around, because that's hard and it's stressful, and you just got to be clear about how that works for you. Facilities, I would say, is important, mainly because different schools offer different things and the focal points are different. So for example, and it can
Can I interrupt you real quick? Can you explain to the listeners what you mean when you say facilities?
I mean, like the classrooms, the gyms, the restrooms. I mean, I worked at a school that didn't have an elevator, and I had to meet with a mom in a wheelchair in a courtyard. And so, like, again, whatever needs your family has, like, be on the lookout for that.
Thank you.
Of course. But again, you depending on what is important to you, some people don't care about that. Some people want their kids to have state-of-the-art stuff. That's really a personal choice and a personal decision. So just have that on your list if it matters to you. Location and commute. This is, I keep saying, I feel like everyone is a big one, but like this is a big one.
Super big.
It will matter where that school is, the younger your children are, because they're getting dropped off, unless you're in a school district with a bus service or dealing with a school, like a private school that has a bus service. It will be the family's responsibility to make sure that student gets to school on time. So think about your logistics. Think about, as an adult, if you like getting up early. If you know you're not going to get up early at 5 a.m. to make sure your kid is good so that y'all could get to school on time, it's not the school for you, and that's okay. But what is most important in this situation is that your child is not running into school late every day. So you either have to decide, like, yes, I'm going to make this lifestyle change and get up early, or we're going to have to make some other choices. Diversity and inclusion. This is not something that's important to everyone, but if it is, I encourage you to ask the tough questions of a school. A lot of times people will ask about how many kids fall into that category. And while that matters, I always push people to think a little bit beyond that. They're like, what does that faculty and staff look like? because that is who is with your children every day. It's not an administrator that you're meeting in the admissions process, or even like a division principal. It is teachers, teacher assistants, academic coaches. Those are the people that are supporting your children. So again, if that matters to you, don't be afraid to dig in and ask hard questions.
So I want to ask a question here about this topic of diversity and inclusion, because I don't want to make the assumption that everyone listening truly understands what it is, right, and what that looks like in a classroom, in a school, and what impact that could have on their child. So can you kind of like unpack that just a little bit more on like what is diversity and inclusion? What does that look like in a elementary school, right? Because these are like first-time families, like you mentioned. This might be their first time in a first grade or kindergarten. They're kind of going through this process. So, like, what does that look like, and why is that important?
I think the one, obviously, like race always comes to mind, but there are so many other things in that. There is socioeconomic background, which we talk about often. There's neurodiversity. Like if you have a neurodiverse child, like you probably want them to be around other students that are similar to them. So like all those things are like a student support office, like all those things matter. And so it really is making sure that the ways that you're unique or your family is unique, that you feel seen and heard in that space. Does that answer your question or no?
No, 1,000%. I think that was a great explanation. Thank you for that. Continue.
Cost and financial aid. So a lot of schools offer financial aid. The funding is not unlimited, so my recommendation is always, if that is something you feel like you need, that you contact that school early, see what programs they offer, what partnerships they have. They may not always have the funding, but they might work with another nonprofit that offers funding. At one, like I obviously worked in the Catholic school system at one point, and we worked with Big Shoulders. And so at one point, Big Shoulders had a scholarship for families that were brand new to Catholic education that they only offered for that 1 year. So there are things that are in place to support families, but again, you have to be proactive, and you have to be able to do that research and find out for yourself what the cost is, and then like if you need support, where that support will be coming from. Then another element of this, and this kind of goes across the board, is like, what are the other financial responsibilities in a school? And I think sometimes, especially like we just had this conversation with a guest on the podcast, as far as like you drop your kid off and you like, okay, they're going to give them back to me exactly how I want. But there are other things that you have to pay for. You got to pay for before and after care if you need it. There are fundraisers. There are all these different things, whether you're in a private school or not, that the school will ask for. So try to have a somewhat of an understanding of what the financial responsibilities will be before you join that community.
Perfect.
Parent involvement, which I touched on that earlier, so I won't talk about that anymore. Values and culture. So in the world of private schools, we call this like the value proposition, and that's really like what differentiates a school from another school, or like what they do best. And so I always encourage families, again, to lean into what you value. Like some places, some families really value science and math. A liberal arts school is probably not going to be what you want. So just be clear about that, and you'll be okay. Special programs. That kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, but again, like look and see, like if your kid likes robotics, if they like debate, if they like golf or tennis, like those special programs. Make sure that you do that research to see if those are there. If that's something that you value as a family.
I think it was a phenomenal list. Everyone out there,
You're so
give me a round of applause. Well, now I will pale in comparison. Put together a little something. And you might hear some of the things that they mentioned. It's almost like we worked on this together, almost. So, your child goes to school all day, but as we know, the learning environment is everywhere, and they, learn all the time. Again, we're everyday educators, and we educate every day, all day long. And so, when your family is looking for a out-of-school program, I put together 10 things that you should consider when thinking of a out-of-school program. Number one. Think about the needs of your youth. That could be academic enrichment. And excuse me, let me take a step back. These are in my order of importance. Okay. So, again, number one, paramount is the needs of your young person, right? Do they need academic enrichment? Do they need academic support? Understand the difference between the two, is this a sports, physical activity, art, mentorship, or some combination of these things, right? First thing that's paramount, what you need, because that kind of directs where you look. And they brought up a good point. Some of these programs might reside within your school or might reside outside of your school. We'll get to that later. Number two, what are the values of this organization? This is a highly under-considered topic, especially in the world of out-of-school programs, but this really impacts how that organization and those leaders make decisions, right? It is at the margins where these philosophies and values come into play. And so you want to make sure they align with your family values and your child's educational goals if this is a more directional education program. Number three. I'm not going to do it the whole time, but here we go. Location and transportation. Honestly, this could be number one. Like, if we're talking about the logistics, right? What it really comes down to, in my experience, this is the biggest determinant of participation. Can my child get there? Can it get back safely, reliably, and consistently? Please do not be afraid to ask if there is transportation assistance. Is there a pickup bus area? I know, like in some rural spaces, they kind of have those where there are locations where they'll pick up the kids and to and from. Are there bus cars if you're in a larger metropolitan area? Is there carpooling, etc.? Right? Bonus tip. Along with the transportation, please confirm the hours of operation. You want to make sure that these align with your work schedule or whoever picking up your child, their schedule, and their school schedule. Because you might go to a public school, you might go to a private school, and this camp, this after-school thing, this mentor starts at 3 o'clock and your kid don't get out at 3:45. So, what are you going to do? So you want to make sure that you confirm the hours of operation. And I guess this could be like a second bonus tip. You need to know their attendance, tardiness, and late policy. Pickup policy and late attendance policy. Unfortunately, it was a young lady at the coffee shop that we go to. Her daughter got kicked out of summer camp because she kept being late. they take the bus. It was on her way to work, so on and so forth, and the family couldn't get there sooner. And so even though the family paid the deposit, so on and so forth, ultimately the child was asked not to return. And so you don't want that to be you, right? You want to have honest conversations with yourself, with your tribe, who's ever helped bring up this child. And so they can just have the best experience as possible, right? Number 4, I'm holding back doing the echo. Number 4 is cost. You want to understand the program fees, registration fees, and all the additional hidden expenses for materials and field trips. You need to know. And again, Nate kind of touched on this. Do not shy away from inquiring about payment assistance, scholarships, fee waivers. You may qualify for programs that are not offered without you asking. Much like any other institution, they don't always share with you up front that we have additional funds, additional monies, to help supplement people who are trying to participate in this program. And so you want to advocate for yourself. Like, I guess this is, if you kind of wrap up everything Nate and I are sharing with you today, it is about self-advocacy and, family advocacy, right? So you want to make sure that you are diligent, that you are taking notes, you're listening to this and you play it back so you can write down all of the tips that we're sharing with you, so that you can have a game plan, right, when you are talking to these different people and, considering what's the best situation for your child. And number 5, you want to review the curriculum and activities of this program. Again, this is something that is very underutilized in the out-of-school space, right? But you want to make sure that the activities that these, young people are doing match the mission and the goal of the org and the program. And you want to make sure that they align with your child's interests and needs, right? So before you sign up, make sure that your student is going to get all of their needs fulfilled, all of their accommodations met. And if there is a need that isn't listed, now is the time to speak with the program staff to see what the options are, right? So, to provide an example, if your child wears glasses and this is a basketball program, you can't afford the special Horace Grant glasses. You need to ask them, like, is there like a shield? Is there a LeBron James face mask that homie could put on so he can practice without shattering the Pearl Vision glasses I got for him that I can't replace till next year? Like, that is just an example, right? But you don't want to put your child in a position where they can't see, where their glasses get broken, and then they might say like, "Oh yeah, we got some extra such and such for so and so. We can let them wear it during practice."
Or we have a voucher that provides Horace Grant glasses.
Or they got the Horace Grant Scholarship Fund. So we don't know, right? They're looking at that one day. But again, if you don't ask, right, then you will never know, right? You got to shoot your shot. Shoot or shoot, as they say. So, another pro tip, number 6, get out the drink. What are the qualifications of the staff? Vet the staff. Do a Google search, a LinkedIn search. Ask if the program, everybody who's working throughout the space, has gone through a background check. You have to understand that safety is paramount. I'm, as a professional that works with young people. I am not ignorant of the danger that we entrust strangers with our families. And we want to make sure that we are diligent, that we are always protecting our young ones. And so, yeah, please make sure that you just ask if they need certification that they need. They should be posted somewhere. Like, there should be something that they can provide to you. Bonus tip: understand their safety protocols and the measures that are in place. So, again, the homie playing AAU, when he inevitably goes up for a dunk and fractures his finger on the rim because he can't quite get over the rim, what are they going to do? Are they going to call an ambulance? If they call the ambulance, who gets the bill? Like, what are the protocols in place? You need to know that, just so that when something happens, because it's not an if. As a young man, I broke my arm 3 times before I graduated 8th grade. So something's going to go wrong. And so you need to know, like, what are their plans, so that you can kind of align yourself and your tribe for the inevitable. With that, number 7, Nate touched on this, and that is the parent involvement expectations, right? So at this point, you've asked some questions, you vetted everybody, looked at the program activities, and you're like, all right, I think it's going to be the right program for my child. But you also want to know, what do they expect of me? Are you expected to participate in carpools? Are you expected to bring snacks and orange slices, which is apparently a thing they do at soccer practice? Are you expected to be at practice to provide additional supervision? Are you de facto coaches? Like, what are you supposed to do so that you will know fully what you're signing up for? And you can avoid misunderstandings on the back end, right? Which leads into number 8. I may be transitioning good. Shout out to me. It's communication. So, you are entering into a relationship with this organization. And with every relationship, you must establish effective communication behaviors. So, is this program texters? Are they emailers? Are they callers? Like, how do they communicate with their families? Do they set up a Discord? Probably a younger program if they got one of those. Or Slack if it's a bunch of like super professional folks. But how are they communicating? I would be crazy if you set your kid up for an after school program and they say, yeah, join my Slack so we can talk to one another. That's the junior Google program. They probably do something like that. But again, how they communicate, right?
And see if they will. Sorry.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and see if they will communicate in the way that you like wish to be communicated with. Like, I like to talk, so like, call me to talk to me because that's just how my brain works. I remember things better that way. Most people, especially in 2023, are not like that. They prefer email or text. And I like those things just as a way to like refer back, but I always pick like I would prefer a phone call. And so just see like that is just another tidbit. Like sometimes they'll be like, we will communicate with you in whichever way you like. So
exactly. Like everybody in the city of Chicago has my personal phone number because just path of least resistance to me, it belongs to the streets now. But that is how I communicate. Like I had that personal touch. If you know me, you can call Jeremy. I got your kid. We can chop it up. We'll go about our day, right? So with that, and that same vein, and they touched on this as well, how are they providing feedback to families? And how are you to ask questions? And specifically, to whom should you direct those questions to? Because the director of the program, the executive director, whoever is at the face and leading, the welcome meeting, they may not be the person that, if you have a question on a random Tuesday afternoon, they may not be the person that you can communicate most efficiently with, right? And so if you need that direct form of communication, you need to make sure when it's come to program time, who are you to direct that information to? Number 9, staffing. So, what is the ratio, right? They talked about this, but even more important than the ratio, especially if you're dealing with nonprofit organizations or small organizations, do they have all the critical team members to accomplish the task? We might want to do all these wonderful things, but as anybody who has hired anyone, post the pandemic, it's difficult to find people to work, and so they may not have, that coach, all the coaches that they're supposed to have. They may not have all the tutors that they're supposed to have, and so if there are any gaps, you want to know that up front. And how is that program managing that, right? What are the adjustments that they put in place since they don't have all of their critical team members? So one, you want to make sure that the activities that they promise that they would do with your child, they're going to do it, but also that there is proper supervision, proper attention, and proper support for your child. And to land this plane, references. So research the program's reputation, read reviews, talk to other parents, want to check for any compliments or complaints. Ask around online. There are plenty of parent groups on Facebook for anything you can think of, right? And so you want to make sure that you can get some insight to the group that you are considering. And if nothing else, see if you can come and visit during like an open session that they have, just so you can, nothing too invasive, but just to see what it looks like, look at the faces, who gonna have your child. And if you are this diligent, if you do all these 10 things plus the bonuses that we share with you today, we're confident that you're going to be able to make a great decision, that your child will have not just a good experience, but a transformative experience. So, how did I do? How was that?